Captain Lee Daeho stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the stars through the massive viewport. His ship was one of humanity's finest, cutting through space at speeds that would have seemed impossible just 50 years ago. The human fleet had grown fast, spreading across 200 star systems like wildfire. Some called it humanity's golden age of exploration, but not everyone was happy about it. The Galactic Council had been watching humanity's rapid expansion with growing concern. 12 ancient alien species ruled the galaxy from their crystal towers on the capital world of Nexus Prime. They had maintained peace for thousands of years by controlling which species could travel where and when. Humans were disrupting that careful balance. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Kim Jae-won," reported Lieutenant Park Seon-ho from the communication station. "It's marked urgent," Daeho nodded. "Put him through." The hologram of Admiral Kim Jae-won appeared in the center of the bridge. The older man's face was grim, his gray hair perfectly styled despite the early hour on Earth. Behind him, Daeho could see the busy command center of Earth Defense Forces headquarters. "Captain Lee, I need you to listen carefully," Jae-won began. "We've received word from Dr. Park Min-ha's diplomatic mission. The Council has been debating something called the Human Containment Protocol for weeks. We don't know the details yet, but it doesn't sound good. Dr. Park Min-ha had been humanity's best hope for peaceful relations with the other species. She was brilliant, speaking 7 alien languages and understanding their cultures better than anyone. If she was worried, then humanity should be worried too." "What are your orders, sir?" Daeho asked. "Continue your patrol but stay alert. If anything unusual happens, report immediately. And Captain, be ready for anything." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's engines. Daeho had served in the human fleet for 15 years, but he had never felt tension like this. Something was coming, and nobody knew what it would be. 3 days later, they found out. Dr. Park Min-ha was in the middle of a meeting with the Andorian Trade Minister when the emergency broadcasts began. Every screen in the Andorian capital suddenly displayed the same image: the 12 members of the Galactic Council sitting in their great chamber. Council Prime Velthar, leader of the ancient Nexari, stepped forward. His blue skin seemed to glow under the chamber's lights, and his 4 eyes looked directly into the camera with cold determination. "Citizens of the galaxy," Velthar announced, his voice carrying the authority of millennia. "Today the Council acts to protect galactic stability. Humanity has shown itself to be an aggressive and unpredictable species. In just 50 years they have claimed 200 systems and continue to expand without regard for established boundaries or protocols." Minya felt her heart sink as she realized what was coming. Around her, the Andorian officials were backing away, their faces filled with fear and uncertainty. "Therefore," Velthar continued, "the Council has voted to implement the Human Containment Protocol. Effective immediately, an energy barrier will surround all human-controlled space. This barrier will prevent human ships from leaving their designated area and will block all communication beyond the containment zone." The broadcast ended, but its impact was just beginning. Captain Lee Daeho was testing his ship's new engines when the barrier appeared. One moment, space looked normal. The next, a wall of shimmering energy stretched across the void, blocking his path completely. His ship's engines simply stopped working when they got close to the barrier. "What is that thing?" asked Lieutenant Park Seon-ho, staring at the massive wall of energy that seemed to go on forever. "I think that's our prison," Daeho replied quietly. Across human space, similar scenes played out. Trade ships found themselves trapped halfway to their destinations. Exploration vessels discovered they could no longer reach the frontier worlds they had been mapping. Communication arrays that had connected humanity to the greater galaxy went silent. Within hours, panic began to spread. On the colony world of New Seoul, engineer Choi Han-bin received frantic calls from his terraforming teams. Their supply ships from Earth were trapped on the other side of newly formed barrier segments. Food and equipment shortages would begin within weeks. "How is this possible?" asked his assistant, engineer Yoon Taiki, as they studied the barrier readings on their scanners. "The energy signatures are unlike anything we've ever seen," Han-bin explained, his voice tight with concern. "This isn't just a wall. It's a complete sphere surrounding all our territory. They've literally put us in a cage." Admiral Kim Jae-won called an emergency meeting of all fleet commanders. The holographic conference room was filled with the images of humanity's finest military leaders, but their faces showed confusion and anger rather than confidence. "The situation is clear," J1 began. "The Council has trapped us inside a barrier that we cannot cross. Our ships lose power when they approach it. Our communications cannot penetrate it. For all practical purposes, we are cut off from the rest of the galaxy." Captain O. Jinwoo, commander of the supply fleet, raised his hand. "Sir, what about our colonies that depend on Earth for resources? Some of our outer worlds only have 6 months of supplies." "That's exactly what I'm worried about," Jaewon replied. "The Council may be hoping that resource shortages will force us to accept their containment." Dr. Park Minha had managed to escape Andorian space just before the barriers closed completely, but her ship barely made it back to human territory. She joined the emergency conference from her small diplomatic vessel. "I was able to gather some intelligence before the barriers activated," she reported. "The Council sees us as a threat to galactic stability. They believe humans are too aggressive and expand too quickly. They think containing us is necessary for galactic peace." "And what happens if we try to break out?" asked Captain Lee Deho. Mina's expression grew darker. "I overheard Council military advisors discussing permanent solutions if containment fails. I don't think they plan to keep us locked up forever. I think they plan to eliminate us if we become too much trouble." The conference room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was not just trapped. They were living on borrowed time, but Admiral Jaewon was not ready to give up. "We've faced impossible odds before," he said firmly. "Our ancestors survived wars, plagues, and disasters that should have ended our species. We didn't get to 200 star systems by giving up when things got difficult." As the conference ended, each commander returned to their ships and colonies with the same grim understanding. Humanity was alone now, cut off from the galaxy that had once seemed so full of opportunity. They would have to survive on their own resources and their own ingenuity. But in the depths of space beyond the barrier's reach, something was watching. An ancient species that had once faced the Council's judgment was preparing to make contact. They had been waiting for the right moment, and humanity's imprisonment might just be the opportunity they needed. The message came 3 days later, transmitted through quantum channels that somehow bypassed the barrier. It was brief and cryptic, but it carried a promise that would change everything. "You are not alone. Prepare for contact. The Kethvar remember what it means to be betrayed by the Council." 20 years had passed since the barriers came up, and humanity had learned to live in their cage. The panic of those first months had given way to something much more dangerous: determination. Commander Yoon. Sora stood in the hangar bay of the secret station, hidden in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Around her, dozens of sleek black ships hung in the darkness like sleeping predators. These were her ghost fleet, experimental vessels that officially didn't exist. "How many successful tests this week?" she asked her chief engineer, Lieutenant Bae Wooman. 17, Wooman replied, checking his tablet. "The quantum phase drive is working better than we hoped. We can stay invisible to sensors for up to 40 minutes now, and the phase effect lets us pass through solid matter for short periods." Sora nodded with satisfaction. The Ghost Fleet was humanity's secret weapon, developed using technology that had only become possible because of their isolation. When the Council cut them off from galactic trade and knowledge, humans had been forced to innovate in ways they never would have attempted before. Dr. Park Minha, now Director of Xenological Studies, arrived at the station that afternoon. Her hair was gray now and lines of stress marked her face, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. She carried a sealed datapad that contained 20 years of careful study. "I've confirmed it," she announced to the assembled commanders. "The barrier isn't just keeping us in, it's keeping the Council out. They can't see what we're doing inside human space. They assume we're getting weaker, fighting over the remaining resources, maybe even dying off." Captain O. Jinwoo laughed grimly. "If they could see what we've built, they wouldn't be so confident." He was right. The resource crisis that the Council had expected to cripple humanity had instead driven them to achieve complete self-sufficiency. Engineer Choi Hanbin's closed-loop ecosystems now supported thriving colonies that needed nothing from outside their own systems. Every world had become a perfectly balanced environment where nothing was wasted. "The Kethvar contact has been very helpful," Mina continued. "They've been feeding us intelligence about Council operations through quantum entanglement communications. Apparently the Council betrayed them thousands of years ago, exiling them to the void between galaxies. They want revenge as much as we want freedom. Admiral Kim Jae-won, now in his 70s but still sharp, joined the meeting by hologram from Earth. Behind him, the command center buzzed with activity as staff planned humanity's next moves. "What have the Kethver told us about the barrier technology?" he asked. Scientist Bae Wooman stepped forward. His hair was completely white now, but his mind was sharper than ever. 2 decades of working with exotic physics had made him humanity's leading expert on quantum mechanics. The barriers are generated by 12 stations, each one protected by a different council species, he explained. The technology uses quantum field manipulation to create an impermeable wall in normal space. But here's the interesting part. Our phase drive technology shouldn't work according to normal physics. The unique conditions created by the barrier have allowed us to develop capabilities that are impossible elsewhere in the galaxy. Commander Lim Hyunwoo, the tactical genius who coordinated all of humanity's military planning, studied the star charts on the main screen. Red dots marked the locations of the barrier generators, scattered across council space. The Kethvar intelligence suggests that all 12 generators must be destroyed within a 30-minute window, he said. If even one remains active, the barrier will rebuild itself and become permanently impenetrable. That's a tall order, admitted Captain Lee Daeho, now an admiral himself. His once black hair was streaked with silver, but his eyes still held the same determination that had carried him through the dark early days. We'd need to coordinate 12 simultaneous attacks across thousands of light years. Lieutenant Seo Min-seok, the youngest fleet commander in human history at just 28 years old, looked up from his tactical display. The Ghost Fleet can get us there undetected. The phase drive technology makes us invisible to their sensors. We could position attack fleets near each generator and strike at the same time. Major Kang Tae-hyun, who led humanity's elite special forces, added his own concerns. The Kethvar warned that the Council has some kind of doomsday weapon connected to the barrier system. If they detect a breakout attempt, they might try to sterilize all human worlds rather than let us escape. The room fell quiet as everyone absorbed this information. They were planning the most ambitious military operation in human history, with the survival of their entire species hanging in the balance. Dr. Jang Na-young, the brilliant quantum physicist who had perfected the phase drive technology, spoke up from her research station. "I've been working on improvements to our phase capabilities. If we can boost the power and duration, we might be able to phase entire fleets through the barrier generator's defenses." "How long do you need?" asked Admiral Jae-won. 6 months for the final modifications. But there's a risk. Pushing the phase drive to that level might be unstable. We could lose ships in the quantum void between dimensions. Major Song Yoo-jin, who led the ground assault teams, studied the intelligence reports on the generator stations. "These facilities are heavily defended. Even if we can phase through their shields, we'll need ground teams to plant charges and make sure the generators are completely destroyed." Engineer Choi Hanbin reviewed the supply requirements for such a massive operation. "We can support 12 simultaneous fleet operations, but it will require stripping resources from every human world. If this fails, we won't get a second chance." Commander Yoon Sora looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. These people had spent 20 years preparing for this moment, turning their prison into a forge that had made them stronger than they had ever been before. "The Ghost Fleet is ready," she declared. "We have enough stealth ships to support all 12 operations. Our crews have been training for this their entire careers." Admiral Kim Jae-won made the final decision. "Operation Exodus is authorized. We begin preparations immediately. In 6 months, humanity will either be free or extinct." As the meeting broke up, the leaders dispersed to their commands across human space. On every world, in every station, in every ship, the preparations began. Factories worked around the clock producing weapons and equipment. Training centers pushed crews to their limits. Supply depots filled with everything the attack fleets would need. The Kethvar continued to provide intelligence about Council movements and weaknesses. They had waited thousands of years for this chance at revenge, and they were determined not to waste it. But deep in Council space, sensors had detected something unusual. The quantum disturbance from the Ghost Fleet's latest test had been brief, barely a flicker in the cosmic background noise. Most Council technicians dismissed it as natural phenomenon. However, One Nixari scientist studying the barrier's performance noticed the anomaly. Prime Velthar received a brief report that something might be developing inside human space. But after 20 years of quiet, he dismissed it as unimportant. Humans are probably fighting each other over the last scraps of food, he told his advisors. Let them destroy themselves. It saves us the trouble of doing it ourselves. The council had no idea that behind their impenetrable barrier, humanity had transformed from a promising young species into something unprecedented. The cage they had built to contain humanity was about to become the launching pad for the most devastating surprise attack in galactic history. In hidden bases throughout human space, the countdown to Operation Exodus had begun. The ghost fleets were ready, the assault teams were trained, and the weapons that would shatter the barriers were loaded and waiting. Humanity had spent 20 years learning to survive in isolation. Now they were about to teach the galaxy what that survival had cost them, and what they had become in the process. The accident happened during what should have been a routine test. Lieutenant Seomin Seok was pushing his prototype ghost ship through its paces in the outer rim of human space when the phase drive overloaded. Instead of shutting down safely, it created a massive quantum distortion that tore a temporary hole in the barrier itself. For exactly 47 seconds, there was a gap in the prison that had held humanity for 20 years. Holy stars, whispered his navigator, Ensign Kim Johan, as they watched the barrier flicker and reform. Did we just break through the council's wall? Minsuk quickly shut down all systems and activated emergency stealth protocols. Send a coded message to command immediately. Tell them we accidentally created a barrier breach during phase drive testing. But it was too late. The energy signature from the breach had been detected across the galaxy. On Nexus Prime, Council Prime Velthar stood before the great tactical display showing the barrier network. A red warning indicator pulsed where the breach had occurred, and his 4 eyes narrowed with concern. Impossible, muttered the chief technician, a small gray alien from the Zephyrian collective. The barrier matrix is designed to be completely impenetrable. Nothing should be able to create even a temporary gap. Defense Minister Kralthos, a massive reptilian from the Saurian Empire, stepped forward. His scales were dark with anger. The humans are developing weapons inside their cage. After 20 years of silence, they're planning to break out. Velthar studied the readings carefully. The energy patterns were unlike anything in their databases. How long would it take to charge the stellar purification array? The room fell silent. The stellar purification array was the Council's ultimate weapon, capable of sterilizing entire star systems by triggering their suns to go supernova. It had never been used, but it had been built specifically for situations like this. 72 hours to full charge, replied the technician. But sir, that would mean destroying 50 billion humans across 200 systems. Better than allowing them to escape and threaten galactic stability, Velthos declared coldly. Begin charging procedures immediately. Back in human space, the emergency meeting was already underway. Admiral Kim Jae-won's face was grim as he addressed the assembled fleet commanders. The Kethver have confirmed our worst fears, he announced. The Council has activated their doomsday weapon. In 3 days, they plan to trigger supernovas in every sun inside the barrier. They'd rather commit genocide than risk letting us escape. Dr. Park Mina shook her head in dismay. 20 years of imprisonment wasn't enough for them. Now they want to eliminate us entirely. Admiral Lee Daeho studied the tactical displays showing human fleet positions. Can we move up the timeline for Operation Exodus? 3 days isn't much, but maybe it's enough. Dr. Jang Nayong looked exhausted as she reviewed her calculations. The phase drive modifications aren't complete. We're still 6 months away from the stable configuration we need for the full operation. What about using the unstable configuration? Asked Commander Yoon Sora. The accident proved that overloaded phase drives can breach the barrier. It's incredibly dangerous, Nayong warned. We could lose entire fleets in quantum space. The ships might phase out of existence completely. Major Kang Tae-hyun checked his weapons inventory. My special forces teams are ready to deploy, but if we're moving this fast, we'll have to rely on minimal equipment and hope for the best. Commander Lim Hyunwoo was already revising the battle plans. We can position the ghost fleets near all 12 generator stations within 48 hours. That gives us a 12-hour window before the Council fires their weapon. Captain Oh Jinwoo looked worried as he reviewed supply requirements. We can support the operation, but barely. Every ship in the human fleet will have to participate. There won't be any reserves or backup plans. The weight of the decision fell on Admiral Jaewon's shoulders. Launch Operation Exodus now with untested technology and risk losing everything, or wait and face certain extinction. We launch in 48 hours, he decided. Signal all fleets to move to their assigned positions. This is our only chance. Across human space, the greatest military mobilization in history began. Every available ship, from massive battlecruisers to small fighters, received orders to join their assigned battle groups. The Ghost Fleet emerged from their hidden bases, sleek black ships that had never been seen by enemy sensors. Engineer Choi Hanbin worked frantically to ensure that the supply chains could support such a massive operation on short notice. His closed-loop systems were pushed to their limits as factories produced ammunition, spare parts, and emergency rations around the clock. Major Song Yujin briefed her ground assault teams on the generator station layouts provided by HFY Intelligence. Each team had studied their target for months, but now they would have to execute their missions with incomplete information and experimental equipment. Dr. Jang Na-young spent the next 2 days making final adjustments to the phase drive systems. She couldn't make them stable, but she could make them more controllable. The ships would still be risking destruction every time they phased, but at least their commanders would have some influence over the process. As the human fleets moved into position, the HFY contacts provided crucial last-minute intelligence. The Council's doomsday weapon was protected by its own barrier generators, but these were older technology that might be vulnerable to phase drive attacks. If we can destroy the weapon before it fires, we might have more time to complete the main operation, reported Commander Yoon Sora from her flagship, the Shadow Strike. I'm volunteering my ship for a direct assault on the weapon platform. Absolutely not, Admiral Jaewon replied firmly. We need you to coordinate the Ghost Fleet operations. Send Lieutenant Colonel Park Jimin instead. His team has experience with high-risk infiltration missions. Lieutenant Colonel Park Jimin accepted the suicide mission without hesitation. His modified ghost ship Phantom Blade was equipped with the most advanced phase drive system available, giving him the best chance of reaching the weapon platform undetected. On the bridge of his command ship, Admiral Lee Daeho watched the countdown timer reach its final hours. Around him, his crew worked with calm efficiency, the product of 20 years of preparation and training. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew this was humanity's last chance. Signal from the HFY, reported his communications officer. They're transmitting the final coordinates for all barrier generators and confirming that Council fleets are moving to defensive positions. Daeho nodded. Send the go signal to all battle groups. Operation Exodus begins now. Across the galaxy, 12 human fleets began their final approach to the barrier generator stations. The ghost ships phased in and out of normal space, invisible to Council sensors but risking destruction with every quantum transition. Admiral Shin Yunbi, commanding the first breakthrough fleet, led the assault on the primary generator station orbiting the Nexari homeworld. Her ships emerged from phase space directly inside the station's defensive perimeter, catching the guards completely by surprise. All batteries, open fire, she ordered calmly. Target the generator core and don't stop shooting until it's completely destroyed. Similar scenes played out at 11 other locations as human fleets materialized inside supposedly impregnable defenses. The phase drive technology that had developed during their imprisonment proved devastatingly effective against enemies who had never encountered anything like it. But the Council was not defenseless. As alarms rang out across their territory, ancient weapons came online and massive fleets began converging on the battle sites. The real fight was just beginning, and humanity had committed everything to this single desperate gamble. They would either break free from their prison or die trying, but they would not go quietly into extinction. In the depths of space, Lieutenant Colonel Park Jimin's Phantom Blade approached the Council's doomsday weapon, phasing through layer after layer of defensive screens. He had one chance to prevent the extinction of his entire species. The fate of humanity now hung in the balance of 12 simultaneous battles scattered across the galaxy. Lieutenant Colonel Park Jimin's Phantom Blade materialized inside the Council's doomsday weapon platform, just as the charging sequence reached 90%. Around him, Massive energy conduits pulsed with the power that would soon destroy 50 billion human lives. 30 seconds to full charge, his tactical officer reported. Once it hits 100%, they can fire at will. Jimin didn't hesitate. All weapons target the primary power coupling. Maximum firepower, everything we have. The Phantom Blade's experimental weapons tore through the platform's internal structure. Explosions rippled through the facility as critical systems overloaded. But even as alarms shrieked and emergency lights flashed, the charging sequence continued. 95%, called his officer. It's still building power. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, 12 battles raged simultaneously as human fleets fought to destroy the barrier generators. Admiral Shin Yunbi's first breakthrough fleet had successfully destroyed the generator at the Nexari homeworld, but at a terrible cost. Half her ships were gone and Council reinforcements were arriving every minute. "Admiral, we're taking heavy casualties," reported Captain Kim Tae-young from the cruiser Defiance. "The Nexari defense fleet is 3 times larger than intelligence predicted. Hold your positions," Yunbi ordered. "The generator is destroyed, but we need to prevent them from rebuilding it. Every minute we buy here gives the other fleets more time to complete their missions." At the Saurian homeworld, Lieutenant Seo Min-seok commanded the youngest fleet in human history, but his tactical brilliance was proving more valuable than experience. His ships danced between the massive Saurian battleships using their phase drive capabilities to attack from impossible angles. "Phase jump complete," announced his navigation officer. "We're inside their formation. Fire everything at the generator," Min-seok ordered. "Then phase out before they can return fire." The hit-and-run tactics were working, but barely. The Saurian fleet was learning to adapt, spreading their ships to cover more space and make phase jumps more dangerous. Commander Lim Hyun-woo monitored all 12 battles from his command ship, trying to coordinate the massive operation despite communication delays across thousands of light-years. His tactical display showed a galaxy in chaos as human and Council fleets clashed at every generator site. "Status report from all battle groups," he requested. The reports came in rapid succession. Generator 7 destroyed. Generator 3 under assault. Generator 11 severely damaged. Generator 5. We've lost contact with the 5th Fleet. Major Kang Tae-hyun's special forces were fighting desperate ground battles inside several generator stations. His teams had trained for these missions for 20 years. But the reality was more brutal than any simulation. "Charges are set on Generator 9, he reported over the comm system, ducking as plasma fire scorched the air above his head. "But we're pinned down by heavy resistance. We need an extraction, or we'll have to detonate manually." Major Song Yujin's team was fighting their way through Generator 4 when the entire station shuddered under bombardment from the orbital battle above. "The generator core is protected by energy shields," she reported. "We need to shut down the power from the inside." Back at the Doomsday weapon platform, Lieutenant Colonel Park Jimin watched his power readings climb past 98%. His weapons had damaged the facility, but not enough to stop the charging sequence. "Sir, I'm detecting a secondary power coupling," his engineer called out. "It's shielded, but if we can overload our phase drive, we might be able to phase directly into the coupling and cause a feedback explosion." "That would destroy us too," Jimin pointed out. "Yes, sir. But it would also prevent them from sterilizing human space." Jimin looked around his bridge at the young faces of his crew. They all knew what he was thinking, and none of them objected. They had volunteered for a suicide mission, and now it was time to complete it. "Prepare for phase drive overload," he ordered. "Target the secondary coupling." "It's been an honor serving with you all." The Phantom Blade began its final phase transition, just as the Doomsday weapon reached full charge. The ship disappeared from normal space and rematerialized inside the heavily shielded coupling chamber. The resulting explosion tore through the platform's power systems, causing a cascade failure that disabled the entire weapon. Lieutenant Colonel Park Jimin and his crew died instantly, but their sacrifice saved 50 billion lives. Across the galaxy, the other battles continued with desperate intensity. Commander Yoon Sora's Ghost Fleet provided crucial support to the main battle groups, their stealth capabilities allowing them to strike at enemy supply lines and communication networks. "Ghost Squadron 7, phase in behind the enemy formation," she ordered. "Hit their command ship and phase out immediately." The ghost ships struck like phantoms, appearing just long enough to deliver devastating attacks before vanishing back into quantum space. The Council fleets designed for conventional warfare struggled to counter these impossible tactics. Captain Oh Jinwoo coordinated supply operations for all 12 battle groups, pushing his logistics network to the breaking point. Ammunition shipment to Fleet 6 is away, he reported. But we're running low on phase drive fuel. The generators can only operate for another 4 hours at this pace. Dr. Zhang Naiyong monitored the phase drive systems from her research station, watching for signs of critical failure. The technology was being pushed far beyond safe limits, and ships were starting to suffer quantum decay from excessive phasing. I'm reading instabilities in the phase matrices, she warned. If we don't complete the operation soon, we'll start losing ships to quantum dissolution. Engineer Choi Hanbin worked frantically to keep the supply chains functioning, as factories throughout human space operated at maximum capacity. Resource allocation is critical, he reported. We're stripping every non-essential system to support the fleet operations. The tide of battle began to turn as human tactical superiority overcame Council numerical advantages. Admiral Lee Daeho's fleet destroyed Generator 2 after a brutal 4-hour engagement, while other battle groups reported similar successes. Generator count, Commander Lim Hyunwoo requested. 8 generators confirmed destroyed, came the reply. 3 more heavily damaged and likely to fall within the hour. Generator 12 is still at full strength, but our forces are making progress. The Council forces were learning to adapt, but 20 years of peace had made them slow to change tactics. Human crews trained specifically for this operation executed complex maneuvers that confused and overwhelmed their enemies. At Generator 11, Lieutenant Commander Bae Jin-yuk led a desperate assault against overwhelming odds. His small fleet was outnumbered 10-1, but the phase drive technology gave them mobility that the enemy couldn't match. Phase in behind their flagship, he ordered. All weapons on the command section. If we can take out their coordination, the rest of their fleet will be in chaos. The tactic worked perfectly. The Council flagship exploded in a brilliant flash, and the remaining ships fell into confusion as their command structure collapsed. As the 24th hour of Operation Exodus approached, the final generator stations fell one by one. The barriers that had imprisoned humanity for 20 years flickered and began to collapse. Barrier integrity failing, reported Dr. Park Min-ha from her monitoring station. The quantum matrix is destabilizing. We did it. The prison is coming down. But victory came at a terrible price. Almost half the human fleet was gone, and thousands of brave men and women had given their lives for freedom. As the barriers collapsed completely, the surviving ships found themselves in open space for the first time in 2 decades. Admiral Kim Jae-won's voice carried across all human frequencies. This is Admiral Jae-won to all human forces. Operation Exodus is complete. The barriers are down. We are free. Across human space, celebrations began as people realized they were no longer trapped. But in the depths of space, long-range sensors detected something that would change everything. The galaxy was about to face a threat that made the Council's containment policy seem trivial by comparison. 6 months after the barriers fell, humanity was still celebrating their freedom when the first reports arrived. Long-range sensors detected massive objects entering the galaxy from the void between star systems. They were ships, but unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. Dr. Park Mina stood in the rebuilt command center on Earth, studying the sensor readings with growing alarm. These vessels are enormous, she reported to the Emergency Council meeting. Each one is the size of a small moon, and they're heading directly for populated star systems. Admiral Kim Jae-won, now in his 80s but still sharp, examined the tactical displays. How many ships are we talking about? Hundreds, replied Commander Lim Hyunwoo. Maybe thousands, and they're not responding to any communication attempts. The first contact came 3 days later, when a devourer ship reached the outer colonies of the Centauri Alliance. The ancient species that lived there sent one desperate message before their entire star system went dark. They consume everything. Stars, planets, life itself. Nothing remains. Within a week, 17 star systems had been completely devoured. The attackers left nothing behind but empty space where thriving civilizations had existed for millennia. On Nexus Prime, Council Prime Velthar faced the greatest crisis in galactic history. His advisors were in panic as reports poured in from across their territory. The Devourer ships are immune to our weapons, reported Defense Minister Kralthos, his reptilian features twisted with fear. Our most powerful battleships barely scratch their hulls. They just keep consuming everything in their path. What about the ancient weapons? Asked Velthar desperately. The stellar purification array? We tried, replied the Zephyrian technician. We triggered 3 supernovas directly in their path. They consumed the energy and kept moving. If anything, it seemed to make them stronger. The reality was sinking in. The 12 council species, masters of the galaxy for thousands of years, were helpless against this new threat. Their technology, their weapons, their ancient wisdom, none of it mattered against enemies that could devour entire star systems. There is one possibility, said a small voice from the back of the council chamber. A young Nexari aide stepped forward nervously. The humans. Their technology is unlike anything we've seen. During their breakout, they demonstrated capabilities that shouldn't exist. The chamber fell silent. The idea of asking humanity for help was almost unthinkable. These were the same humans they had imprisoned for 20 years, the species they had tried to exterminate just months ago. They have no reason to help us, Velthar said quietly. We tried to destroy them, but they might help save the galaxy, the aide pressed. From what we've learned, humans have a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Meanwhile, in human space, the emergency councils were reaching the same conclusion. The Devourers were heading toward human territory, consuming everything in their path. In perhaps 6 months, they would reach the outer human colonies we could run, suggested Captain O Jinwoo during the strategy session. Load our ships with as many people as possible and head for another galaxy. Run where? Asked Admiral Lee Deho. These things came from the void between galaxies. There's nowhere to hide from something like this. Commander Yoon Sora had been studying the sensor readings from her Ghost Fleet scouts. I've analyzed their ship movements. They're not just randomly consuming systems. They're following energy gradients, looking for the most populated areas. They want to devour as much life as possible. Dr. Jang Nayung had been working around the clock analyzing the Devourer technology. Their ships exist partially outside normal space, she reported. That's why conventional weapons can't hurt them. But our phase drive technology might be able to reach them. Might? Asked Admiral Jaewon. The quantum physics are extremely complex. We'd be fighting enemies that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, but our phase drive gives us the only known way to attack them effectively. The debate continued for hours until Lieutenant Seo Min Seok, now promoted to captain after his heroic actions during the breakout, spoke up. The council is sending a diplomatic mission. They want to meet with our leadership. The irony was not lost on anyone. The same council that had tried to exterminate humanity was now coming to ask for help. The meeting took place on a neutral space station in what had once been the barrier zone. Council Prime Velthar arrived with a small diplomatic team, looking older and more tired than anyone had ever seen him. Across the conference table sat humanity's leaders, Admiral Jaewon, Dr. Park Min-ha, Admiral Lee Deho, and the others who had fought for their species' freedom. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. We come to ask for your assistance, Velthar began, his 4 eyes fixed on the table. The Devourer threat is beyond our ability to handle. Our fleets are being destroyed, our worlds consumed. At current rate of loss, the galaxy will be empty within 2 years. Dr. Park Min-ha leaned forward. You imprisoned us for 20 years. You tried to commit genocide against our entire species. Why should we help you? Because, Velthar replied quietly. If we all die, the diversity and beauty of galactic civilization dies with us. We were wrong to fear humanity. Your adaptability, your refusal to give up. These are exactly the qualities the galaxy needs to survive. Admiral Jaewon studied the alien leader carefully. What are you proposing? A full alliance, complete sharing of technology and resources, joint command structure for the war against the Devourers, and... Velthar paused, clearly struggling with the words. Human leadership of the combined fleets. Your tactical doctrine is superior to ours. The human delegation exchanged glances. This was the moment they had dreamed of during their darkest days in captivity. The council admitting that humanity was not just equal, but necessary. We'll need complete access to council technology, Admiral Lee Deho stated. No restrictions, no classified information. If we're going to fight this war, we need to know everything. Agreed, Velthar replied immediately. And after the war? Asked Dr. Min-ha. What happens to the galaxy then? The council will be dissolved, Velthar announced, shocking his own advisors. A new galactic government will be formed with representatives from all species, including humans in leadership positions. The negotiations took 3 days, but eventually the Terran Council Alliance was born. For the first time in galactic history, humanity would lead a combined fleet of all the galaxy species. Admiral Shin Yunbi was chosen as Supreme Commander of Alliance forces, with human tactical doctrines forming the basis of the new military structure. Commander Yoon Sora's Ghost Fleet became the core of the Alliance's Special Operations Forces. The first joint operation came just 2 weeks later when Devourer ships entered the Rigel system. The combined fleet, led by Captain Minsok's tactical brilliance, used phase drive technology to attack the Devourers in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It worked. For the first time since the invasion began, Devourer ships were destroyed instead of simply consuming everything in their path. The war that followed lasted 3 years and tested every species in the galaxy. Engineer Choi Hanbin's closed-loop technology became essential for rebuilding worlds the Devourers had damaged. Major Kang Taehyun's special forces led joint human-alien teams against Devourer landing sites. The decisive battle came when scientist Bae Wooman discovered how to create a quantum phase singularity large enough to banish the remaining Devourer fleet to another dimension. The process required him to sacrifice himself, manually controlling the singularity from inside the quantum field. His final message was simple. The galaxy is worth saving, even after everything they did to us. When the war ended, the galaxy was forever changed. The new Galactic Alliance was founded with humanity as co-leaders alongside the former Council species. The Kethvar emerged from their exile to join the Alliance as honored members. Dr. Jang Nayung established the Interspecies Technology Exchange, where the combined knowledge of all galactic civilizations would be shared freely. Captain Oh Jinwoo led the construction of memorial stations at each former barrier generator site, not as monuments to human victory, but as reminders that diversity made all species stronger. 5 years after the Devourer War ended, Admiral Lee Daeho stood in the observation deck of Alliance headquarters, watching human and alien children play together in the gardens below. The old barriers were gone, replaced by trade routes and communication networks that connected every corner of the galaxy. Major Kang Tae-hyun, now General and Head of Alliance Special Operations, joined him at the window. "Do you ever regret not taking revenge against the Council when we had the chance?" Daeho was quiet for a long moment, watching a human child help a young Nexari who had fallen while playing. "Revenge would have made us what they feared we were," he said finally. "Instead, we became what the galaxy needed us to be." The irony was perfect. The Council had imprisoned humanity because they feared human aggression and expansion would destroy galactic peace. But when the real threat came from outside the galaxy, it was humanity's supposedly dangerous qualities, their adaptability, their refusal to surrender, their ability to innovate under pressure, that saved everyone. The species that had once been seen as the galaxy's greatest threat had become its greatest protector. And in saving their former enemies, humanity had proven that sometimes the